Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us for the session today. Strengthening your statement of purpose with Boise State University. It's planned for you if you're planning to apply for graduate studies in the U.S. Before I begin, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Omar Bashir, and I am an Education USA advisor based in the Karachi office. Before I also move forward, I would like to formally introduce you guys to Education USA. Education USA in Pakistan is a part of a U.S. Department of State network of over 430 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries and territories. The network promotes U.S. higher education to students around the world by offering accurate, comprehensive, and current information about opportunities to study at accredited post-secondary institutions in the United States. Education USA in Pakistan is your official source of information on U.S. higher education and offers free educational advising services. So if you look at the college application process, it could be a bit daunting. So Education USA has broken down the U.S. college application process into 5 simple steps. And our advisors help with all of these 5 steps today. However, today we will be focusing on the 3rd step, which is completing your application. And the component of completing the application is statement of purpose. And our panelists today, who I will introduce momentarily, will be talking to us how to have a good statement of purpose for your admissions application. Education USA also has an app now. You can download this app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Through this app, you could chat with Education USA advisors during the regular business hours. The regular business hours are Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Through this app, you can also access our events and alerts, and you will also get a chance to access our frequently asked questions. Also, this is our link here for our free advising services, which is educationusa.pk/register. And then bottom here, which is omar.bashir@uscfp.org. That is my email address. If you have any questions after the webinar today, you're welcome to send me an email and I will be happy to assist you. In case you need free advising services and you're not signed up for our services, please visit educationusa.pk/register. Once you register, you're going to get an advisor assigned. They will send you a welcome email. You can send them an email. You can reach out to them if you have any questions, and you can also schedule an advising session with them where you can discuss your application process and whatnot. So moving forward, I would like to introduce you to our panelist today, who's from Boise State University. And Brian Stelbotsky is going to be talking to us about the SOP. Brian Stelbotsky currently serves as a Director of International Admissions at Boise State University, where he works with international undergraduate and graduate students from all around the world. Brian has also worked in international admissions at the University of Pittsburgh and an overseas branch campus of University of Utah in South Korea. Outside of US universities, he has consulted with nonprofit in crisis and has worked in the edtech startup space. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy and English writing from the University of Pittsburgh, where he also earned his master's in public administration. Currently, he is a doctoral candidate in Boise State PhDs in public policy and administration program, where he studies citizens' experiences in emerging public sector technologies. Welcome to the panel, Brian.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am very excited to be here and speaking with you all. Good evening to everybody. It is early morning here, so I'm just beginning my day, and I'm excited to be able to begin my day with all of you talking about this topic. I think it's incredibly important and is something that is a little bit difficult sometimes about the application process. As Omer said, my name is Brian Stelbotsky. I am currently the Director of International Admissions at Boise State University. I have been in this role about 5.5 years at this point. So I'm fortunate to be able to work with students from all around the world, including in Pakistan, and to work with them on really all aspects of their application processes, including their statements of purpose. So I see many, many students' statements of purpose, and really enjoy this part of the process. As we will talk about, um, the statement of purpose really differentiates students in the application process. And that's really exciting. It's a way for people like me and for faculty at the graduate program that you may be applying to get to know you a little bit better. Um, as Omer mentioned, I am also myself a PhD candidate at the moment. So I have at the master's level and at the doctoral level been through the application process myself at US universities now several times. And so I have written my own statements of purpose and have thought quite a bit from that personal perspective about what makes a great statement of purpose, and how to craft that. So I'm excited to share that with you all today. I think we will have plenty of time for Q&A throughout, or questions answered at the end, but you can leave your Q&A throughout the presentation, and I'll look forward to addressing all of those as we wrap up. So Omer, we can go to the next slide here.
Yes, Brian, I'm so glad that you brought that up. So students can put their questions in the Q&A box, and towards the end, I will take the questions for you. So it'll be helpful if you can get all the questions in the Q&A box.
Perfect, thank you. So before we dive in here, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my context and where I come from. I think that's important for understanding what I have to share with you today. So Boise State University is a large public research university. We have about 22,000 students who study on our campus currently. We are located in the city of Boise, which is the capital of the state of Idaho. So we are up in the northwest portion of the United States. And Boise is an amazing city, medium-sized US city, one of the fastest growing areas in the entire country. And the university offers about 200 different degree programs, including many, many graduate programs at both the master's and at the doctoral level. We currently host students from over 75 different countries, including many from Pakistan. And the university has an emphasis, a real culture of innovation. So you'll find that permeates every aspect of the university, from the classroom to the research labs to the student life experience on campus. And so I think it's important to understand where I'm coming from, because there are so many universities in the United States. There are somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 colleges and universities in the country right now. So every single one is unique. Every single one offers different opportunities and a different experience for students. But I think that there are some common things that you can be thinking about when writing your statement of purpose for any graduate program. And so we're going to talk about those, but I will, throughout the presentation, I will reference the fact that it's really, really important that you tailor these things to the institution and to the specific program that you're applying to. And we can go to the next slide. So today, I wanted to share a little bit before we really jump in here about what we'll be talking about and what I hope that you can walk away with from this presentation. So today's agenda, I want to start by talking about what we mean by statement of purpose. So I think it's important that we define our terms here, and then also why it's important. So why do you write one? What is it accomplishing? Why are graduate programs asking you to do this in the first place? Then, of course, the purpose of today, we're going to talk about how you can make that statement of purpose great. So for the purposes of our conversation, I've broken this down into kind of the writing process, right? So things that you can do before you write, things that you should be thinking about and hopefully doing while you write. And then finally, before you submit your application, how can you be taking a look at that statement of purpose and making sure that it's the best that it can be. And then, of course, as I mentioned, I'll be answering questions at the end. So my goal today is to leave you with a couple of things. Um, I hope that you walk away from this session with a better understanding of what statement of purpose is. I hope that you also have an understanding of what admissions committees and faculty members are looking for in your statement of purpose. And then the practical tips that I'll share for strengthening your own statement of purpose. Next slide, please. So what is a statement of purpose? I have put together a really simple definition of a statement of purpose. So I would define it as a short written statement that articulates, that explains your reasons for seeking admission to a particular graduate program. Right? So nearly every graduate program that you apply to in the US will ask you for this. They may refer to it as slightly different things. So often it's called a statement of purpose. It may be a research statement or a statement of goals or a personal statement. But essentially, what it's asking you for is why you want to study in that particular graduate program. And even more specifically, why you think you're a great fit with that program. So often it will include things like a bit about your background. It may also include some specifics about your research interests. It also should include your reasons for being interested in that specific program. And I want to emphasize that we're going to talk about that more, that your statement of purpose to truly be great needs to be tailored to the specific program that you're applying to. It may also talk about your goals after completing your degree. So if you're applying to a master's program, maybe you're thinking about the type of jobs that you may want to pursue in, or the doctoral programs that you may be looking toward after completing that degree. If you're thinking about a doctoral program, you're likely thinking about research and where that may take you after graduation. Now, of course, and we'll talk about this more, you may not know exactly what your path looks like after doing your degree. Graduate programs know that. Oftentimes your goals and interests will change as you move through your graduate program, but having some sense of why you're pursuing that degree is really, really important for writing your statement of purpose. Your statement will probably also have information about your accomplishments and your achievements. So this is a chance to talk about what you've accomplished, what is in your CV or your resume, and to expand upon that a little bit further so that the admissions committee can get a sense of who you are outside of your grades. This may also be a place to identify specific potential faculty supervisors. This requirement or request will vary from program to program. Not all graduate programs in the US require that you identify a supervisor in advance. Some very specifically require that you do. Oftentimes this will be done in your statement of purpose. So most of the time when you're writing your statement for a graduate program, you will have most of, if not all, of these things included in that statement. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Graduate programs in the US receive many, many applications. Some may receive hundreds or thousands of applications every single year. Of course, there are a limited number of seats in any given graduate program. Every single applicant who applies will submit their transcripts or mark sheets. They will submit their test scores. So graduate programs may be looking at your TOEFL scores or your IELTS results. They may be looking at GRE or GMAT results. Every single applicant will submit those things. Those are incredibly important. Your grades are important, your marks are important, your test scores make a difference in the application process, but they also only offer limited insight into you, who you are as a person, and your fit with a specialized graduate program. As you move further and further up the educational ladder, this becomes more and more true, right? So your degree program, your studies become more and more specific. And so that fit becomes even more important. Everybody who submits transcripts and test scores to a graduate program in the US has hopefully done well in their studies. And that offers some insight for the admissions committee, but the statement of purpose is really what helps them to understand your goals, your background, how your research interests might be a good fit with that specific program, and really begins to show them who you are outside of the classroom and why they might want to accept you into their program. So the statement of purpose really accomplishes two goals, I think. It shows the admissions committee why you want to study there and what your goals may be. And at the same time, it shows them why they may want you to join that program as a student. So it's incredibly important that you think carefully about how you articulate and how you explain those things as you write that statement. So next slide, please. So as you write this statement of purpose, it shows committees how you fit with their graduate program, but it also does a few other things. So that statement of purpose can really illustrate your critical thinking ability. So that is an important part of graduate programs in the US. Graduate programs are, of course, teaching you content, right? Maybe you're learning more about business or engineering or whatever field you may be studying, but it's also an opportunity to deepen your critical thinking abilities. And so that statement of purpose helps to illustrate your own critical thinking. It also demonstrates your writing ability. In US graduate programs, students write a lot, particularly as you move up into the doctoral level. Writing is maybe the key component of many graduate programs. And so using that statement of purpose to demonstrate that writing ability is important. It also showcases your passion and enthusiasm. When you get to the master's level or the doctoral level, you are likely passionate about the topic that you're thinking about. And so showcasing that and showing admissions committees what you care about and why is a great opportunity in your statement of purpose. It highlights any research that you may have done, or it highlights your preparedness for doing research at the graduate level. So not everybody who comes into a graduate program in the US has had extensive research experience, but particularly as you move from the master's to the doctoral level, you will be doing research. That will be a key component of your program. And so highlighting that research and that preparedness to do research is an important function of your SOP. Through all of this, it also differentiates you from other applicants. So as I said, everybody who applies is submitting their transcripts or mark sheets and their test scores. Many are great students and have done very, very well, but it is the statement of purpose often that really differentiates you from other applicants. It also allows you to address special circumstances. So everybody's situation, all of your contexts and backgrounds are unique. You all have certain circumstances that you may wish the admissions committee to know about. Your statement of purpose can be a place to discuss those and to share more information about your own individual circumstances, whatever those may be. So a well-crafted statement of purpose will allow the admissions committee or the faculty members who are reviewing your application to learn more about you, to see more than just your transcripts or your test scores, and to think about you as a person and how you might fit with that program. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So I want to move, hopefully we now have a bit of an understanding of why a statement of purpose is important and what it might contain. And I want to talk a bit about how you can make your statement of purpose great. So as I said, I've broken this down into kind of the writing process. So thinking about before you write, while you're writing, and then after you're writing, but before you submit your application. So before you write, probably at this point that you're at now, you're thinking about finding the right program, finding a university that suits your needs and your interests. There are all sorts of things that you can be doing to be preparing yourself for creating a great statement of purpose. Next slide, please. Before you start writing your statement of purpose, it's really critical that you make a plan. This will help to keep you on track and to ensure that you have a great statement of purpose by the time you go ahead and submit your application. And fortunately, a lot of this also happens at the same time that you are researching universities, finding the right graduate program, learning and thinking about what makes that program a great fit for you. So when you're thinking about writing a great statement of purpose, before you ever start writing, I think it's really, really important that you research carefully the programs that you're planning to apply to. Because, as I said, your statement of purpose should ultimately be tailored to each individual graduate program. And so in order to do that, you need to have that information and to think carefully about the information that you find and what it means for writing your statement of purpose. So in researching the graduate program, there are a number of different questions, I think, that you can be thinking about that can help to inform what you write in your statement of purpose. So things like what courses are taught in the program. This, of course, helps to inform whether or not that program is a good fit for you. Is it teaching the things that you're looking to learn about, which in turn informs your statement of purpose. What research are faculty involved in? Particularly at the doctoral level, that research fit is so incredibly important. Doctoral programs become incredibly specific. And so understanding what research faculty are involved in is really important for understanding whether or not that's a great fit, and then also for writing that statement of purpose tailored to that specific program. Also, what are the focus areas of that program? So you may be looking at a PhD program in computer science, for example, but are there further emphasis areas or focal areas that the program has an emphasis on? So are they thinking about cybersecurity or data science or artificial intelligence? Knowing that about the program helps you to, again, understand if it's a good fit and craft your statement of purpose accordingly. I think we can also think carefully about what language is used on the program's website. And this tells us something, I think, about the program's goals and their intentions, and the program's values. Right? So when we compare two different graduate programs, we might see a language that focuses on heavily on research, or heavily on writing, or heavily on community involvement. There are many different things that a graduate program may emphasize. And we can learn a lot about what the program is looking for and what their goals are for students just by focusing on that language and thinking about that. Um, Thinking carefully about that then in turn helps you to tailor what you've written and craft your statement of purpose such that it demonstrates that fit with the program. So as you do this research and you answer these questions and you think about your own questions about what you want to learn about the program, when you're preparing to write your statement of purpose, you can be considering your own alignment with that. So what about your background, interest, or goals aligns well with what you found in your research about that program? And then as you craft your statement of purpose, writing that statement of purpose to speak to that program and the information that you found will really make that come alive for that program. Next slide, please. Researching your program, and you are preparing to write your specific statement of purpose. It's very, very important that you familiarize yourself with the requirements for that statement of purpose. So many graduate programs will have similar requirements for their statements of purpose. But as I said, there are so many universities in the US. Each one is unique. And so those requirements may vary from program to program a bit. So you may have unique guidelines for content. So sometimes graduate programs will give you specific things to write about in your statement of purpose. And they may explicitly tell you or ask you to write about your research interests, research background. They may be more and it is also common to have slightly different formatting. Articulate specific formatting requirements. Others may ask very specifically that you format that a particular way. There are also likely to be very specific deadlines associated with your application process. So as you plan ahead and you think about writing your statement of purpose, making sure that you've left enough time to move through this process and to write and revise your statement of purpose is really important. And one common question that comes up is whether you need to write an entirely new statement of purpose for every single application that you submit. I think it's perfectly okay to reuse portions of your statement of purpose in multiple applications, but it's important to make sure that it makes sense to do so. So when you think about the specific content that a program may have asked you to write about, and you think about all of the things you learned in your research about that program, you can, of course, reuse portions of that. Your interests may be the same. Your goals may be the same. And so you do not have to write a brand new statement of purpose for every single application, but you need to make sure that it is appropriately tailored to that application itself. Next slide, please. After you've done all of your research and you've learned about the specific program's requirements and content and formatting, all of these things that we've just spoken about, you can start to gather your materials, right? So I always encourage students to try to gather everything all in one place so that you can review it and think about it as you begin to write. So you probably want to consider your academic background, right? So you'll have your transcripts and your academic materials. You may not write about your grades specifically in your statement of purpose, but having those to consider and put into context is important. You will, of course, want to consider your research or academic interests. So thinking about what courses you've taken and what projects you've worked on and where you've gone to university and what you've been involved in is important. You also want to consider your academic and professional successes. So what have you accomplished? What have you achieved, whether that's inside the classroom or outside the classroom, that can inform your interest in the graduate program and what you may be hoping to accomplish after you finish it. And then, of course, you've already been thinking about this if you've been thinking about graduate programs in the US, but thinking about your goals, what you want to accomplish. And so starting to pull all of this information into one place and thinking about it so that we can begin to build one coherent statement of purpose. Next slide, please. And so this is a very practical tip, but I always encourage students to make an outline. Before you begin writing, it's helpful to make a plan. So personally, I find it helpful to outline what I plan to write, to have a framework for what I want to accomplish, and then to begin writing based upon the outline that I've made. Everyone's writing process, of course, is different. And so you'll have to think about what works for you, but outlining specifically what I want my statement of purpose to accomplish, what content I plan to and how I plan to move through this document can be really helpful when I sit down to write for keeping myself on task. And then as I finish, being able to go back, look at my outline, compare it to what I've written, and say, did I accomplish the goal that I set out to do? So as you do something like this, I would recommend that you consider questions like what you want to share with your readers. So what is your story? What is your background? What do you want them to see or to think about as they review your application? How much space do you have to tell that story? So of course, every single one of us has many, many things that we could talk about. Our interests, our backgrounds, our challenges, but we only have a limited amount of space, often 1 to 2 pages to write a statement of purpose. And so thinking about what is important and how we maximize that space is really critical. And then, of course, how you plan to differentiate yourself. So what makes you different from other applicants that are applying to the program? And thinking about who is reading that statement of purpose, the faculty members who are reviewing your application, is a good way to frame that. And at this point, you've done all your research about that program and what faculty interests are, and you have an understanding of what that program's goals and interests may be. And so thinking about what you're writing and who your audience is can really help to guide that process. Next slide, please. So those are all things that you can do as you prepare. And it's a lot of research. It's a lot of reflection and thinking about what you may want to present to the admissions committee. And then, of course, you actually have to sit down and write your statement of purpose. And so there are some important tips that I would like to share for you for writing your statement of purpose and making it as impactful as possible. Next. as you write your statement of purpose, I would encourage you to think about telling your story, right? One way or one important part of doing that is to be genuine in your writing, to reflect on your experiences and your motivations in a sincere way. So it is very important to talk about your achievements and your accomplishments, but to be genuine about your interests and your experiences. Having read and myself written many different statements of purpose, it becomes apparent when students have a genuine interest in what they're writing about and are sincere in what they're telling the admissions committee. And so being yourself, writing in your own voice is an important way to give the committee a sense of who you are. I would also recommend avoiding creating a completely different story or statement of purpose for each program. Emphasize the aspects of that story that genuinely connect with your interests and goals related to that program. So when you apply to several different graduate programs, you are, of course, still individual in each of those applications. So your story is probably similar. But taking all of that research information and molding that story so that you can articulate why you're a good fit for that specific program is an important thing front of mind as you're writing. You should also avoid repeating information that is already evident in your other application materials unless it's specifically requested. And here I'm thinking mostly about things like your grades or your GPA, your test scores. The admissions committee will see all of that information. It is usually not necessary to repeat that information in your statement of purpose. So unless the admissions committee or the application information prompts you to talk about that, I would recommend not giving significant amounts of space to repeating the things that the admissions committee will see in other pieces of your application. I think that the statement of an opportunity to expand on those things and share information that might not be immediately apparent from your mark sheets or from your test score. So avoid as best you can repeating that information that people reviewing your application can easily see elsewhere. Next slide, please. You also want to highlight your achievements, and this can be difficult, I think. Many applicants have a tendency to not want to sound like they're bragging about their achievements. But your statement of purpose is a chance to communicate things you've accomplished or achieved, things you're proud of to the admissions committee. I recommend, if you can, choosing achievements that are related to the program or to the field that you're applying to, and to be specific. So choose a project, an initiative, a research experience, something else that you think is an achievement or an accomplishment that you want to highlight, and discuss it in depth. Take that and discuss the achievement and then communicate to the committee why that achievement or accomplishment is important in the context of this application. I would also encourage you not to be too humble, but also not to oversell yourself. And there's a fine balance here, I think. So many students have incredible achievements, and you should talk about those. But admissions committees are also aware that for many students, you may be early in your professional career or early in your academic career, and that it's important to be realistic about those achievements. So when students write a statement of purpose and say that I found the cure for cancer, the committee often knows that that might be overselling that achievement a little bit. So finding that realistic balance is important. I would also recommend prioritizing recent achievements. Things that have happened more recently are good to highlight. They don't necessarily have to be immediately recent, but if you have achievements that are more recent and a bit older and a bit older than that, thinking about which ones you want to highlight and when they've happened can be an effective strategy in your statement of purpose. And then I would say don't overload your statement of purpose. So if you have many things that you want to talk about, try to narrow it down. Choose a focus, choose a few key achievements and talk about them in depth. You can, of course, mention other achievements and should mention other achievements, but spending your space on the things that you think are most important or serve most effectively to communicate who you are and your interests and your background is a good way to decide what you include in that statement. Next slide, please. As you highlight your achievements, I think it is important and often very effective to describe the impact of those achievements. That may be on yourself, on your research, on your academic achievements, on a team of people that you worked with, on the community, but thinking about what you've accomplished or what you've achieved, and then also what it meant for other people or other teams can be a really effective way of tying those achievements to something larger. You can also use your achievements to showcase soft skills, right? Like teamwork, problem solving, communication, adaptability, all of these qualities that make somebody a great academic or researcher or student can be oftentimes well highlighted by talking about your achievements. And so thinking about what you've accomplished, how you've accomplished it, and what it showcases about you is important as you think about how to communicate those. Next slide, please. When you can, I think one very effective strategy for communicating achievements or accomplishments is to quantify those. So talking about a number of publications or an amount of money raised or the size of a grant awarded. This could be any number of things, of course, but it's an effective strategy, I think, if you can, and not all achievements can be quantified, to communicate that because oftentimes the impact or the impressiveness of that is easily apparent when you can quantify those things. So, of course, this tip does not apply to everything, and you'll have to think about your own particular statement of purpose and situation, but one possible strategy for communicating those things effectively. And next slide, please. You may also want to use your statement of purpose to explain or to address gaps or weaknesses in your application. Sometimes this will be specifically in the prompt that the university may give you. Other times it may not be, but there may be things that you wish to address. So there could have been challenges in your experience or things that you've overcome that you want to talk about. And maybe this is academic or something else that has happened in your life that affected your academic journey and that you wish to address. I think that would be a great place to do that, to be honest, to be transparent. Admissions committees are well aware that everybody has challenges, that we have all overcome something in our academic journeys. And so talking about that can be really effective, especially when you frame it in terms of what you've gained as a result. So you've overcome this challenge, and what did you learn from it? How did it impact your way of thinking, or your goals, or your approach to your academics or to your research? So it's perfectly fine to humanize yourself, I think, and to talk about your own particular challenges, but framing them appropriately and making them positives is oftentimes an effective way to communicate those things. Next slide, please. So after you've done all of this research and you've hopefully written an excellent draft of your statement of purpose, there are a few things that I always recommend to students before you submit the application. Next slide, please. So you should always go back and check out your statement of purpose to revise it, to reread it, to edit it, to make sure that it is what you want to submit to the admissions committee. And it's important that you're convincing them here, that you're not confusing them. So try to be concise. Go back, read your statement of purpose. Is it concise and is it clear? So you probably want to avoid specific jargon or complex language. These things can be appropriate when related to your research interests, because many fields do have specific language that applies to that field. But making sure that you've communicated clearly is important. I also always recommend seeking feedback. So give a copy of your draft statement of purpose to people that you trust. These may be mentors, people that you know through school or professionally. They may be peers whose opinions and feedback you trust. Give this draft to people, get their feedback about that feedback, and if you find it appropriate, integrate it into your statement of purpose. You should always proofread, proofread and proofread. Make sure that your grammar is correct, that you spelled things correctly. Admissions committees understand that students from around the world may be writing their statement of purpose in their second or third language. It does not have to be 100% perfect as if a native English speaker wrote that. Of course, you have your own context and background, but it should be a polished document that has been proofread, that you've put the effort into to make that as clear as possible. One silly example that I will give you is that if you do repurpose portions of your writing for different applications, make sure that you've used the correct university's name and make sure that you've put in the correct faculty's name, specific faculty. Small details are very important. As you complete the writing process, also return to that early research part that you did and check again the deadlines, the prompts, the formatting requirements to make sure that you've done exactly what was asked and what you've set out to accomplish. Next slide, please. And those details really do make a difference. I recommend using a clean and professional format when you write your statement of purpose, a simple, readable font, appropriate spacing. Sometimes universities will specifically ask that your statement of purpose is single-spaced or double-spaced. Make sure that you follow whatever those guidelines may be. And pay attention to all of those small details because as admissions committees read many, many statements of purpose, it may not stick out immediately if you followed all of those guidelines that they've given you, but it is apparent when someone has not. And so it's always worthwhile to return to your statement of purpose and double check with all of those things in mind. And next slide, please. So thank you very much. I've left our contact information up here, both for getting in touch with us at Boise State, and also my WhatsApp contact information. You are welcome, of course, to reach out with questions about statements of purpose or anything else that you're thinking about when you're looking at graduate programs. And I think we have many, many questions, and so I wanted to leave lots of time to address those. And I appreciate you spending part of your evening with me today, and I'm looking forward to talking more about your questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was really, really good. Even I learned a lot of things from it. So thank you so much. Students, I have seen a couple of questions in the chat box. If you could please revert them to the Q&A box, as I will be taking the questions from there. There's a lot of demand for recording being shared. Yes, it will be uploaded on our Education USA Pakistan Facebook page in the upcoming weeks, so you can access it from there. So I will go to the questions now. Okay, so a lot of students asked us, Brian, how long SOP should be?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is no standard answer to that, unfortunately. So the length of your statement of purpose, the first thing you should check when trying to determine how long it should be are the requirements of the program that you're applying. Some will tell you very, very specifically a maximum length. It should be X number of words or X number of pages. That is the most important guideline when thinking about how long that should be. If no specific guideline is given, then my recommendation for students is typically 1 to 2 pages. If your statement of purpose is longer than that, it likely needs to be shorter because admissions committees are reviewing many options and reading these. So you want it to be a link that will read and that communicates that important information. So refer to the guidelines first. If there is no specific length, I think 1 to 2 pages is typically a length for that.
Thank you, Brian. So Mariam is asking, is it advisable to incorporate details about my personal life, family experiences, and how they have influenced my academic and university choices in my statement of purpose?
Yes, I think absolutely. As I mentioned, your statement of purpose is really a chance to communicate more about yourself that people at the university cannot learn from your mark sheet, test scores. And so your family experience or your specific personal experiences may be an important part of that. I think that ultimately you want to highlight your things that are relevant to your goals with that graduate education. But talking about your background and your family experiences is absolutely appropriate. That's the purpose, as long as you make it clear why you're talking about that and why it's relevant to your graduate application.
Thank you so much. So another question is how to address the gap between your master's and PhD.
That's a good question. I think that many times that won't be a major concern for admissions committees. Not uncommon in the US for people to time between their degrees. If there is a significant gap or you feel that you need to address it, I would address it by talking about what you did in that gap. What what work experiences were you having? What were you achieving? How are those things related to either why you want to continue on to, or maybe to your goals at PhD? So I don't think that that gap is necessarily negative. I'm sure that you were still things in that gap that provide good things to be talking about in purpose.
Thank you. So there's a very good question here. The student is asking, will reusing the same content for multiple applications not appear as plagiarism?
Mm. That's an excellent question. So I usually advise students that it is okay to reuse portions of your personal statement in multiple applications. Uh, it is, and it should be your writing. So I don't believe that you're misrepresenting yourself by having written something and then reusing portions of that in multiple. Of course, you want to update details appropriately. So you want to make sure that uh, that statement of purpose is still tailored to the new university's requirements and that other universities' guidelines and information about their graduate program. But those details about yourself and your goals and your accomplishments are probably remaining pretty similar, regardless of which university you apply to. So that wouldn't be looked at as something that is plagiarism, but that I think is an effective strategy for managing multiple applications. Um, of course, it should be your work, and taking somebody else's work would, of course, be a different scenario that would not be appropriate for your statement of purpose.
Thank you. So a lot of students, these days are using ChatGPT, right? So there are a lot of questions related to ChatGPT. Some are asking, is it okay to use ChatGPT for grammar and punctuation?
You will find many different opinions on ChatGPT and its appropriateness, I think. I think that there is absolutely a place for using ChatGPT appropriately in that process. Um, ChatGPT, I think, and similar tools can be really helpful for things like grammar, punctuation, revision, um, and also for creating a framework for your ideas. I think it's often appropriate when you have your own ideas and your own statement of purpose to be using tools like that to help you think about how to best communicate them. Um, it is not appropriate, and this would connect, I think, to the plagiarism idea, to have ChatGPT write your entire statement of purpose and then to represent that as your own work. So there's a fine line there, I think, and I encourage students to use the tools that are available to them, right? So I know many students use things like Grammarly to check their writing as they write. And I perfectly appropriate. And something like ChatGPT, I think, can be appropriately used. But at the end of the day, it should be your statement of purpose that you've written. And so ensuring that you've still written it, even if you are consulting with ChatGPT, is important.
Thank you so much, Brian. So the student is asking if someone has two masters in two different fields and he or she is applying for PhD, is it advisable to mention the second or the first master, or to mention extra masters?
I think absolutely. So usually when you apply to a graduate program, you'll submit a copy of your CV, your resume. Your both of your masters should be mentioned there. I think how much time or space you devote to that in your statement of purpose depends upon the relevance of that degree or of those degrees. So It may be the case that the work that you've done in those programs is relevant to the PhD program that you're applying to. In this case, I would say absolutely, you should talk about both of them. If one is more relevant than the other, then I would spend my space focusing on that more relevant experience. But no PhD program is ever going to look at 2 masters and say that's a bad thing. So I would certainly think that it's okay to talk about if you think it's relevant.
Thank you so much, Brian. So in the questions box and the chat box, I'm seeing a lot of students are asking like their personalized story, and every case is different. For those students, I would recommend that if you can sign up for our advising services, schedule an appointment or send us an email, and we will be happy to schedule an appointment with you and talk with you and advise you. Our website is educationusa.pk/register if you want to register for our advising services. We do review statement of purposes as well. As long as you are not applying for the Fulbright, advisors will review your SOPs and provide you feedback and tell you how to improve. Thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time out and doing this session for us today. I'm sure our Pakistani students they really appreciated this session, and it benefits them because SOP is really confusing sometimes to some students, but it clears out a lot of things with what you have said. Thank you so much.
For having me, and thank you to everyone for joining, spending a bit of time with me today, and for really excellent questions. And if I can help with anything, of course, you have my contact information and you're welcome to be in touch.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much, students. And once again, if you want to send me an email, my email address, Brian, also, if you could just type your email address in the chat box, and then we will just sign out. So Brian and I have input our email addresses in the chat. We will just give a couple of seconds for you guys to like take it, and then we can leave. Brian, thank you so much once again. You're more than welcome to